I'm J.R. Church. Welcome to today's webcast. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. You know, we've got a lot to be thankful for. God has been so good to us. We have lived in this nation, the land of the free and the home of the brave, for so many, many years. I want to talk to you about Psalm 46 today. Psalm 46 depicts the end of World War II and the watchword among the Jews, which was, "Let's go home." You may recall in 1945, April 1945, Adolf Hitler was defeated. He committed suicide. It was in August of that year, 1945, that the big bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, and 2 weeks later another bomb dropped on Nagasaki, and I want you to know the war was over. Over in Europe, over in the Pacific. It was over. God won the war. In fact, Psalm 45 says, "Gird thy sword upon thy thigh, O most mighty, and with thy glory and thy majesty, and in thy majesty ride prosperously, because of truth and meekness and righteousness, and thy right hand shall teach thee terrible things, thine arrows shall sharpen the heart of the king's enemies, whereby the people fall unto thee." That's the end of World War II. Well, when we get to Psalm 46, we have the Jews saying to each other, "Let's go home. We're tired of becoming the whipping boy of the world. We're tired of these nations that slaughter us. We're tired of these people giving us such a bad press and calling us names. And we're tired of all of the pogroms. Let's go home." For he says in verse 4, there, in Jerusalem, there is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God. That's Jerusalem, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, Jerusalem. She shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early. The heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. The heathen raged. That comes right out of Psalm 2, one of the themes of the Psalms. World War I, World War II. And here at the end of World War II, the psalmist says the heathen raged. That is, they made war. And he goes on to say, God is in the midst of Jerusalem. She shall not be moved. You know, God never promised that there would always be a Berlin, but he did promise there would always be a Jerusalem. God never promised there would always be a Hiroshima, but God promised there would always be a Jerusalem. And so, the psalmist says, God shall help her, and that right early. Listen to verses 8 and 9. "Come, behold the works of the Lord, what desolations he hath made in the earth. He maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth." This is 1946, Psalm 46. The war was over. From one end of the world to the other. No more war. "Come, behold the works of the Lord. What desolations he hath made." Take a look at Hiroshima. What desolations he hath made in the earth. Take a look at Nagasaki. What desolations he hath made in the earth. Take a look at Berlin and London. What desolations he hath made in the earth. Come, behold the works of the Lord. He maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. From Europe to Asia, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, he maketh wars to cease. In Psalm 47, "O clap your hands, all ye people. Shout unto God with the voice of triumph." Verse 4, "He shall choose our inheritance for us, the excellency of Jacob whom he loved." Inheritance? What inheritance? The land. Listen to what it says. Clap your hands, all ye people. Do you remember when the news came, November, I think it was, 29th, 1947, the United Nations voted 33-13 to establish the state of Israel? Well, the newsreels show the Jews dancing in the streets. "Oh, clap your hands, all you people. Shout unto God with the voice of triumph." And David Ben-Gurion, who had headed up the Jewish Defense Forces fighting against the British, was in a hotel down at En-Gedi on the western shores of the Dead Sea. He was tired. He was asleep. The United Nations vote came, and he was taking a nap. So a soldier ran up to the second floor room where David Ben Gurion was napping and burst into the room. Well, Mrs. Ben Gurion went, "Shh, shh, don't wake the old man." But the soldier thought the news was so good he had to wake Ben Gurion. He went over to him and shook him and said, "Wake up, sir, wake up. The United Nations has just voted to establish the state of Israel." David Ben Gurion rallied, sat up on the side of the bed. His feet hit the floor. He jumped up and he said, "We've won." Verse 2 says, verse 1 says, "Shout unto God with a voice of triumph." David Ben Gurion said, "We've won." Shout unto God with a voice of triumph. November 29th, 1947, verse 1, Psalm 47. He shall choose our inheritance for us, the excellency of Jacob, whom he loved. And then, of course, that representing 1947, May 14th, 1948, Psalm 48. Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, the mountain of holiness, beautiful for situation. I've talked to you about that. For lo, the kings were assembled, picture of the United Nations General Assembly. They passed by together, saw it, marveled, troubled, hasted away. Fear took hold upon them there, and pain as of a woman in travail. There's the birth of the baby Israel. Thou breakest the ships of Tarshish. The British had to pull their flag down and leave. They were no longer welcome in the Holy Land. And then he says, verse 13, "Mark you well her bulwarks, consider her palaces," that is, take a walk around Jerusalem, look at the fortresses, count your bullets, count your guns, war's fixing to start. He says, tell it to the generation following. What generation? The generation born in that little baby right there, when the woman had pain and troubled and was in travail. The baby born was Israel. The same motif is seen in Psalm 1. Blessed is the man. We see the baby born, and he says, tell this to the generation following. What generation? The generation born in 1948. Tell it. For this God is our God forever and ever. He will be our guide, even unto death. This generation shall not pass away. It shall not die until all the prophecies are fulfilled. What a marvelous group of Psalms, 46, 47, 48. And they were fulfilled in 1946, 1947, 1948. And the Psalms just happened to be the 19th book of the Bible. Book 19, chapter 46, 47, 48. Fulfilled. I'd like for you to get the lecture that I gave before a live audience on the prophetic Psalms. We'd be glad to send it to you as our way of saying thank you for your donation to help us in providing our studio with the equipment that we need. We need some new equipment so that we can go to 16 by 9 format. The equipment we have can only record 4 by 3. All right, 4 feet wide, 3 feet tall, whatever your screen is on your. Maybe your screen is 9 inches wide and so on. But anyway, we want to go to a widescreen, and you can help us with your donation, whatever it is, during this Christmas season. If you will just simply pick up your phone and call the phone number at the bottom of your screen, 1-800-475-1111. If you do so at night, you'll get our answering service. They can take your call. But if you want to talk to someone in our office directly, call during the work hours from 9 o'clock in the morning to 5 in the afternoon Central Time and talk to one of our staff. Make your donation and ask them for the Prophetic Psalms DVD. We'll be glad to get it out to you as our way of saying thank you for your help to get our new studio up and going. I'm J.R. Church. We'll see you again with our studies in the Psalms.